All right, guys, so this is the Chapter 4 test review over sequences. We're looking here at the very first one of our 20 multiple choice problems. And it says for each sequence, just state whether it's arithmetic, geometric, or neither. So what we're doing with this problem is we're just trying to see every step of the way, what are we doing? So when we go from here to here, what happened? When we go to here to here, what happened? Okay. On these, for a lot of them, it's pretty straightforward. For example, on this one, I can see that I'm multiplying by 3 every step of the way, which tells me it's geometric. If you weren't sure, remember, you can always try to work the problem backwards. You can say, okay, I think I multiplied to get from here to here, so let's try dividing our second and our first term and see what happens. So when I do that, I'm doing -6 divided by -2. I hit enter, and it gives me a +3. So I'm thinking every step of the way I'm multiplying by 3. I know that's how this first step worked. Let's try the second step and see if it works. So it should be -6 times that 3 that popped up. -6 times 3 gives us that next term in the sequence, -18. So now I know for sure that it is a geometric sequence because we're multiplying. Our next one we see from every step of the way, if I was multiplying, I'd be multiplying by 4 to get to that next step. But if I multiply by 4 again, I don't get 9. That tells me it's not a geometric sequence. Now I think about adding. When I go from one step to the next, if I add right here, I've added 3. And if I do that again, to add 3 again, I won't get 9 either. So neither of them worked out. I know it's not an arithmetic sequence. So it's neither. For my third option, I'm looking and I'm saying, okay, what happens when I go from one step to the next? And I cannot tell, okay? I cannot tell. Whenever I can't tell, I know I'm gonna have to work this problem backwards, okay? But I don't know if I added to get to this next step. If I add to get to the next step, it means I subtract backwards to see what the difference was. If I multiply to get to the next step, I divide backwards to get the previous one. So I always like to try for arithmetic first, okay? If it's arithmetic, that means I have to add to get to this next term, but I don't know what I added. It's hard to see. So I'm gonna work it backwards and subtract to see what my difference might have been, okay? To do that, I'm doing alpha y equals enter. I'm doing 1/3, and I'm subtracting 2. So if it's arithmetic, every step of the way, my calculator says I should be subtracting 5/3, okay? And I don't know if that worked. I know that worked on this first step because those are the 2 numbers I used. So try the second step. Try doing alpha y equals enter. Try doing 1/3 and subtracting away that answer we just got over here. So minus, and it's only subtracting, and I shouldn't say subtracting, I should say adding this answer, okay? We're actually adding this -5/3. Well, that's the same thing as subtracting 5/3. So I always just press subtract, but I shouldn't say that. Remember, these are always adding, okay? But we're adding this -5/3. So let's change it. Let's add this negative alpha y equals enter 5/3. Adding a negative is the same as subtracting. We've seen that plenty of times before, okay? And I press enter. Well, what pops up is it says, well, if I do that step, if I take my second term and I do adding a -5/3, I'm gonna get -4/3, and that's exactly what we got, okay? So we are adding to get to every step. That means we have an arithmetic sequence, okay? Moving on. This says, given the explicit formula for an arithmetic sequence, find the first 5 terms. Guys, if you can just count up, you can get these right. And if you know what our definitions of our sequences are, and they're gonna be on that formula sheet, okay? So we're looking for arithmetic sequences, and they gave us the explicit formula. This is explicit arithmetic. So my first term I know has to be whatever's right here in our equation. Well, they gave it to us, it's this -5. So our first term is -5. Then every step of the way, I have some sort of common difference. And if you just look on your formula sheet, you know that difference has to be whatever number's just pegged out here at the end. So every step of the way, I'm going -200. I'm subtracting or adding a negative. I'm subtracting 200. So that means my next term should be negative 205. There's no need to actually use this equation. There's no need to look for a of 2 and plug in a 2. That'll work. You could plug in a 2 right here and find the second term in your calculator. But for a lot of people, it's easier just to count, okay? My next number in the sequence would be another minus 200, which would be negative 405. And already just with those first two steps, I can see I'm only left with one option. But just to check, I made sure this third option worked well too, okay? Again here, they've given us our a sub 1. That's our first term, has to be 33. Sorry, has to be 33 because that's our a of 1. Well, right there, I'm already out with option D. I know it's not that. Every step of the way, I have a common difference of positive 5. So I'm adding 5. Well, that means I should have 38. And right there, I know I'm down to option A. It's the only one that's got 38 as the second term. For number 6, says, given the recursive formula for the arithmetic sequence, find the first 5 terms. So this recursive formula is really good at this because it's actually used to find the next term. And we saw in class that you can use it for that. We also saw in class that this is something you've been doing all along, even on that very first day of sequences, where you're just finding the pattern. Well, it tells us what our first term is. It's 40. Okay, that's what it gives us with a sub 1. And then what it tells us is that our common difference is negative 200 or minus 200 or adding a negative 200. Those are all the same thing. So to get to my next step of the sequence, I need to subtract 200. Well, if you're not great at doing that math in your head, just throw it in your calculator. 40 minus 200 is going to spit out negative 160. So negative 160. If I subtract 200 again, I get negative 360. Those are my first 3 terms. It says the first 5, but I look and I see I'm already only left with answer A. Okay. On to our next one, same song, second verse. Our first term is negative 39. And every step of the way, we've got to add 6 to it. So when I add 6 to that, I'm going to get a negative 33. Remember, when I add positive numbers to these negative numbers, it should get to be a less of a negative number. So on a number line, our negative 39 would be there. And when we add 6, we should move to the right on the number line. Okay, and a positive 6 moves us to the right on that number line. Well, right there, we're already left with just option C. Okay. On to number 8, it says, given the first term and the common difference of an arithmetic sequence, so that should have already been a giveaway, common difference, arithmetic sequence, keywords, find the 52nd term. And now's where we actually got to start breaking out some of these formulas, okay? So for this one right here, we know we need our arithmetic sequence, common difference. Well, the one that tells us any term we want is that explicit formula. So we've got negative 14 and a negative 100. And we're going to be using our explicit formula, which is a sub n equals a sub 1 plus n minus 1. And then we always put the d out back because that's how it is on your formula sheet. That comes straight from the formula sheet. We're still using this arithmetic explicit. It's the most useful of the formulas of these two. Okay, same thing holds true with the geometric explicit. It's more useful, okay? So that's our formula, and now we've just got to put our pieces in there. We have a sub 1, and we have our common difference. So when we plug this information in, we have a sub n, but we know what a sub n is because in the problem, it said 52nd term is what it wanted. So we're looking for a sub 52. That's our index. Equals a sub 1 is negative 14 plus, we know n. We already wrote it in once, so you write the same number in there. We use the index right there. N for index, even though it starts with an I. Minus 1, and then we're multiplying it by our common difference. I put it in parentheses, you don't have to, but it helps me remember because a lot of people, they'll just write minus 100 over here. And when you write minus 100 and put this in your calculator, you're going to get it wrong. This is multiplication, so we're multiplying by a negative 100. If you use the negative sign of your calculator, it'll be fine. But if you do a minus 100 in the calculator, it's going to give you the wrong thing. So a sub 52 is what we're looking for. That negative 14 stayed the same.